Hey guys, happy Saturday. Nearing the end of another week in quarantine. Hope everybody's hanging in there. We've got just a minute before we begin. Wanted to go ahead and get our stream started and give people the opportunity to find us and join us if they want to. Being a Saturday, don't know how that will affect who's online and who's not. Right now, every day seems the same. I'm the only one that isn't always sure what day it is right now. It's weird, right? Very, very different than our normal experiences for sure. We'll wait just a little bit longer, get situated here. Some may join us live, others no doubt will watch a replay later or even the archive. So let's get started. I'm Alan Rigg, once again, lead pastor of Sola Church. We are launching in Santa Monica this fall. So many things that we can't do 6 months this side of a launch, but then there are so many things we can do. And one of those things is to reach out online, to connect with new friends in Santa Monica and on the West Side, and at the same time to connect with friends across the country and around the world. Um, this week we've been talking about how we're going through this communal experience, such a unique thing for people all around the world, for people in countries all over, to be experiencing the same thing at the same time together. And so it's created a reason to pray, but also a season to pray, because so many of us have to stay at home. We have to work from home or may not be working at all. We're being told not to go out unless it's to get essential supplies and so forth. So all of a sudden we find ourselves with a season to pray like we don't normally have. So for a lot of people, though, there are questions about, well, how do I pray? What do I say to God? How do I say it? And so this week, starting on Monday, each day at 1 o'clock, we've been talking a little bit about how to pray. We've been talking about the model prayer. Sometimes we call it the Lord's Prayer, this model prayer that Jesus gave his followers. And so today we're actually going to finish that up. For those of you that may be joining us, that may be watching, I just encourage you to leave a comment, say hello, a hand wave, a comment, and we'll respond to those later as we're able to. But just a reminder before we begin this final episode that tomorrow at 1 p.m. we'll do like a 30-minute pop-up service. So we're going to try to include a little bit of worship in that. How'd you guys like to hear Miranda do a song or two? That'd be awesome, right? So we'll see if we can make that happen tomorrow. A little bit longer message than these little 10-minute devos that we've been doing. But let's jump in and talk about this sixth petition in the Lord's Prayer. So 6 petitions. 3 we learned having to do with God's glory, 3 having to do with our good. The 3 having to do with God's glory, each of them containing a your phrase, your name, your kingdom, your will. And then the 3 having to do with our good, each containing an us phrase. So give us, forgive us. And now in episode 6, lead us. So here's that 6th petition. In Matthew 6, verse 13, it says, do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And then there's a part that not every translation has. It says, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. We want to deal with that lead us phrase. It says, do not lead us into temptation. I heard one time about someone with a t-shirt that said, lead us not into temptation. We can find it for ourselves. That's true, isn't it? It's not a sin to be tempted. That's important, I think, to understand. It's not a sin to be tempted. It's a sin to sin, but it's not a sin to be tempted. Jesus was tempted without sin, of course. The apostles were tempted, and every human being is tempted. The problem is when we allow temptation to grow into a specific act of sin. The great reformer Martin Luther once said that, you can't keep the birds from flying around your head, but you can keep them from building a nest. So, that's what we want to do. We want to keep the birds from building a nest, but we don't want to beat ourselves up because there are birds flying around our heads. That's not something that we have a whole lot of control over. So, when Jesus says what he does about temptation, and when we think about temptation and specifically about the temptation to sin, well, what is sin? Think about it like this. Remember, the prayer started with our Father in heaven. So we have this dad in heaven, and like any good parent, he wants what's best for us. As parents, we tell our children things to do, like brush your teeth. Why? Because we don't want them to lose their teeth. We tell them things not to do, like don't run out on the street. Why? Because we don't want them to lose their life. So we tell them things to do and things not to do. And like any good parent, our dad in heaven is doing the same thing when he tells us that we are to do these things and not to do those things. Many times, the temptation to sin is the temptation to meet a God-given need, but in an unhelpful way. In other words, we may try to meet a God-given need in a way that's harmful or hurtful rather than in a way that's helpful. And so God wants to give us the guidance that we need to avoid the harmful and hurtful things and to choose instead the helpful things. About temptation, I've read before that we could ask ourselves these questions like what settings are we in when we're tempted? We should avoid those settings. What props do we have that encourage us to sin? We should eliminate those props. What people are we usually with when we're tempted? Sometimes we have to make hard decisions about distancing ourselves from people simply because we can't make good choices when we're in their company. It's not about them, it's about us, totally, 100%. But one thing that's unique about this situation that we're all in right now is that on quarantine, well, there are some things that you might struggle with normally that you're not struggling with right now, just because you don't have access to those settings or to those props or to those people. But then on the other hand, there could be other struggles that are more difficult for you right now than they ordinarily are. There could be something about being stuck at home that is creating new temptations, or that is making particular struggles even more accessible than they normally would be. So, again, that makes this kind of unique, but that's why we not only need a guide, someone to lead us in the right way and not the wrong way, but we need a deliverer. And that's part of the prayer, right? Jesus said that we should pray, deliver us from the evil one. So he wants to be our deliverer, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But notice this reference to the evil one, sometimes also called in the Bible the tempter. So we have a spiritual enemy. Like Greg Laurie often says, he is a marketing genius. The tempter has had a long time to perfect his craft. He's really, really good at tempting us. And so we need to understand that. But here's another thing we need to understand about temptation, and that is that in every temptation, it is both a temptation and a test. At the same time that the tempter is tempting us, the deliverer is testing us. The tempter is tempting us to bring out our worst, but the deliverer is testing us to bring out our best. So when you're being tempted, when you feel like your back is against the wall, well, remember when like when your kids were little, maybe, and you would have them stand up against the wall and you would mark the wall. And then 6 months later, you'd have them stand against the wall and you'd mark it again. And you could see that they'd grown half an inch in those 6 months. Well, so too, when we're being tempted and our backs are against the wall, on God's part, on the part of our deliverer, It's not a temptation, but it's a test. It's an opportunity for us to actually make the right choice and not the wrong choice. It's an opportunity for us to demonstrate our spiritual growth, our movement toward maturity and toward Christ likeness. It's an opportunity for us to measure the spiritual formation that is in fact taking place in our lives. And one of the cool things is, based on the previous petition for forgiveness, we know that when we do blow it, he wants to forgive us. But here we're reminded that before we blow it, he wants to help us by leading us, by delivering us. So if I were praying this, during this time, I might pray something like this. Like, thank you not only for forgiving us, but for giving us everything we need to say no to things that are harmful and hurtful, and yes to things that are helpful. Thank you for making us spiritually alive, for giving us a new nature, for filling us with your spirit. I pray that you would strengthen the people I love spiritually, strengthen them spiritually, and help them in whatever battle they may be fighting today. And strengthen me. Help me to say no to anything and everything that makes me less than you've called me to be, robbing others of the person I could be and of the relationship we could have if only I made better choices. I commit with your help to making the best choices for me and for the people around me today. I hope that not only this episode, but all 6 episodes have been an encouragement to you, giving you an idea of what to say to God and how to say it during this time. Just a reminder, Sola Church, online startup parties that would have happened in March in person are instead happening in April online. These are 1-hour events online. They're like an interest meeting, but way more fun. So if you are in Santa Monica or know someone in Santa Monica, message us today right here on our Facebook page for details, or go to solachurch.life. There on our website, we have contact information, phone number, email, all of our social media. Give us a follow, watch for details. But if you'll message us, we'll reply today with information about our first online startup party. And again, join us tomorrow, Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And we'll do, instead of this 10-minute Devo, we'll do like a 30-minute mini pop-up service with a little bit of worship and an inspiring message to help you get through this time. God bless you guys. Have an awesome weekend.